meet Samuele? How did you find this kid?
The question is about finding Samuele, the kid in the film. Well, I found Samuele because I felt the need when I was in Lampedusa to switch the point of view, and I wanted to make this film with the point of view of the little kids. This was something I felt very strongly because in all my previous films, except in Boatman, and it was here 20 years ago, and then there were never kids in my film. Then another kids protagonist, the film is here. I wanted to have a protagonist who was a kid because that was giving me a lot of freedom, and I didn't have to talk about migration. And at that time, when I started the film, it was an important issue, but not as much as now, which is an extremely important. In the film, I always said there's like three stories. It's Anna Lampedusa, it's a migrant, and then outside the frame there's politics, which came really very heavy into the film. So at the beginning it was not like that, and I wanted to have this point of view from a kid. And when I asked, I had another very important encounter in Anna Lampedusa. It was my assistant director, Peppino Del Volgo, who I met him there, and slowly he became my feedback constantly on the island, and he opened into the family that he knew and the situation. And when I told him I needed to have a protagonist, a kid, he introduced me to a few kids. And then one day I met Samuele. He was playing with his light shot just in his backyard, and I started talking to him, and I met this. He's really very small kid. With the mind of an old man. And he was playing with his slideshow, which is completely unusual. You know, it's like something I used to do maybe when I was a kid myself. I'm over 50, and he's only 13. And so it was belonging to the past. There was a certain archetype, Ruth, on him, which was for me so much close to an identity that I was looking for in the island. And I was talking to him, and he put a broom really far away, almost at the end of the wall there of the theater, and he was able to hit the broomstick. And he turned to me and said, "In life you need passion, and then you can do anything." And I thought, who better than this little kid can tell us the truth, if we are talking about truth.
Any other questions?
My question is, did you have the camera in the room alone, say, when they were doing the ultrasound or the examination room? Did you just leave the camera and you leave, or did you stay?
The question is about whether or not the camera was left in scenes such as the one with the ultrasound and Gianfranco was absent.
That's what I always did, but I was there. In the sense that I switched on the camera and then I didn't touch anything else. I didn't pan, I didn't think. So I was disappearing every time the camera was on. In that case, every time the camera was on in very intimate situation, I kind of went into the room thinking that somehow something was going to happen, and put my camera on my tripod, and then let the situation happen in front of my camera, and didn't intervene on any kind of things. And this is somehow in most of the scene of the film, except one, which I'm sure everybody of you will guess which one is the most directed scene in the film. Is the one when we discover a fisherman walking in the back of the two kids playing, which somehow that scene happened in reality, but I was filming the two kids, and then the fisherman came and started interfering with the scene, and he came and he was ruining that scene. And then I thought in that moment, it would be so beautiful if he walked in the back of the two kids and I can follow him and then follow him in the film. So I asked him to somehow walk while the two kids that never realized that all this was happening. So I asked him to walk in the back of the thing in a pan, and then we go with him underwater. And he was someone I was working with, and I wanted him to be in the film. And it's the most unsuccessful scene in the whole thing, because I was never able to filming outside. But then I'm very loyal to all the people that I start this journey with, because first I have to find the whole people that I'm gonna follow, and then I'm gonna start filming. And so I had all the people with me when I started rolling the camera. But with him, I was never able to film in his own world, which is outside, because he's a compulsive fisherman. He goes at any season. He walks exactly the way he was with his, and I see him walking the island, and I feel so much fascinated with him in his daily walk and then go underwater. That maybe his truth is exactly being underwater, and that's why I brought it. But somehow in the film is the most almost surreal part, you know, which has nothing to do with documenting anything, but somehow was a moment of breathing. We breathe while he's underwater, and that somehow, for me, it worked. Although it's a bit surreal, the figure of the fisherman.
And how long did you spend on the island?
1.5 years.
And I have to ask, how much
And I put-
footage did you
I
have?
put 15 kilos. Because the thing you have to do there is eating. And
That's how you
only,
get to know people.
only at the end, when I told Bartolo, I said, what can I say for not eating here? He said, well, you have to say you have, how you say that, the disease of the blood with sugar.
Diabetes?
Diabetes. I said, oh, diabetes sounds horrible. They say you have high glycemia. So when I say I have like high glycemia, I was able to eat less, but it was too late.
And how much footage did you have, and how did the editing process work?
I had 70 hours, 80 hours of footage, and it's very important to say something. When I encountered death in the middle of this, at the border of Europe, for me it was a very, very striking moment, and I didn't want to end the film there. The film, I wanted to go to Africa, I wanted to go, I still have time on my schedule of shooting. But once I decided to film that scene, and mostly to declare that scene part of our tragedy that we're living, and I didn't have any more energy to keep filming, I called my editor and I said, Jacob is the name of the editor, I need to start editing the film. I don't know if we have a film. I have a story of a kid, I have a story of an island, I have a story of people arriving to this island, a story of rescue. And there are basically 3 stories, and I don't know if we are able to edit, but that's what we have to do. And I want to include this scene in the film. So basically the whole film is being edited in order to arrive to that moment and to leave from that moment to still give dignity to the island, which somehow was my own deal that I had when I went there, because everybody was saying, you're not going to do another film on migrants here. I said, no, I want to do a film on the island mostly. But yet I cannot dismiss the fact that this island is a beacon of freedom for people that come from Africa. So I will have to include all that. And so I had still to give dignity to the island by including that scene of tragedy. And so the whole film was edited on that way. But it was a fast editing. We put probably like 2 months, and after like 2 weeks we already had a kind of structure, very loose. We did have a structure. And this because I feel myself, I'm always in the back of the camera, so the memory works very well. I know exactly my frame, I know exactly what I shot, I know what it works and what doesn't work. So when we start editing, I kind of close my eyes and just, I had a fantastic assistant with me. And I was just taking out scenes that somehow were in my mind. And after I did that, we end up with 20 hours of footage. And that's how the film was built, around these 20 hours. So we never had to go through searching 70 hours of film and searching for things that are not part of your journey, of your memory.
Way in the back.
You mentioned Mare Nostrum. What about other countries helping the Italian Navy?
Yeah, when I mentioned Mare Nostrum, was the beginning of this border, and then after there's Frontex, and then after there is something I forget, like all these kind of organizations that are there. But somehow, the moment that border was institutionalized by the government and by Europe, paradoxically, the death increased enormously. because 3-4 years ago, people leaving Libya to reach Lampedusa, they were doing in boat that they were much safer, and they were journey that somehow had to last 7-8 days, and people arrived in the island, and there were not so many deaths. And the moment the border was like constructed, and with all this presence of Navy, it doubled the death. Because they say, okay, you go there, and after a few hours of navigation, you're gonna be saved by the Navy. We give you a cellular phone or a satellite phone. You're gonna ask for help, and they're gonna come in. But it's not like that, because I was in that ship for 40 days, and the sea there is immense, immense. There's no way you can see a little boat there. And when we encountered that boat, it was like a few miles from Libya. It was like 5 hours navigation, like 11 miles from the boat, from Libya coast. And we encountered that boat completely by chance. And then after the rescue, we realized there were 50 people underneath the boat that somehow they died, like in a chamber gas with the fume of the engine. So at that point, I realized those journeys are really like a tragedy for those people. And when I had to go down there and film that, it was horrific. And the commander of the ship asked me, "Did you film that?" And I said, "No, I cannot do that." And he told me, "This is your duty." It's like being in front of a chamber gas during the Second World War and say, "It's too harsh for me to film that. It's your duty to show that to the world," and that's what I did. And that's when somehow the film stopped.
We have time for 2 more questions. Standing in the back there, it looks like there's 2 of you there. The woman in front, please.
Is that what they call standing ovation? No.
Almost.
What was the next step after the rescue of the immigrants, and was it all financed by the Italian government?
Sorry, the question was about what is the next step after the rescue of the immigrants?
Well, the next step is, for me, is tragedy. Because these people, they arrive in Lampedusa with hope, and as I say, they stay a few days there, 2-3 days. And for me, the scene that synthesize all this is the scene of the prayer of the Nigerian people, which somehow is an epic moment. It's like being witness of history there. And once I was able to film that scene, I felt like this is history I'm filming. And then when the people are playing football, there is an incredible lightness. These are all countries that fight with each other, like Sudan, Libya, Eritrea, Ethiopia, and something else there, but it's like a moment of aggravation, it's a moment of hope. So when they arrive there, there's hope. And then once these people are brought into the mainland, which is in Italy, and there are like thousands of people, they're waiting to be recognized as a political refugee. And this is a huge process, it can take 2-3 years for a family, for an individual, for kids, young kids that arrive there alone. And I don't think we are doing enough. And when I say we, it's not only the Italian government, which somehow they can do what they can there, but it's like the whole European community. And this is a situation that has to be solved in a political way with a huge amount of consensus. And when you have countries like Hungary, Austria, Poland, and now probably very soon France, Germany, with the populist choices, is going to be a defeat for the European community and for the sense of European community. But also here, I hear that your Prime Minister, who is a very beautiful and open-minded person, he declared with enormous pride that he got 25,000 people. And the truth is, like, only yesterday in Lampedusa arrived 5,000 people. In this last 6 months, there arrived probably like 80,000, 50,000, or 150. The numbers is like so huge now that we cannot say. It's like with death, it's like 250 die 300 die, 1,000 die, 20,000 die, and it's just number till the moment you see on the eyes that these are people. And so till we don't arrive to that awareness, it's a lost battle. And we're gonna pay the consequence, not only in Europe, but I think all over the world. Because the world is made by people moving around, and that's the history of the world. And there's no barrier that ever survived to history.
Last question up at
Are all
the
the
back.
bodies buried at sea?
Excuse me?
Are all the bodies buried at sea?
The question is whether or not all the bodies are buried at sea.
Well, I think the one that are found are not buried at sea. They're buried in cemetery in Sicily, in Lampedusa, and in places where they can bring a body. But I believe when we talk about 20,000 people die, there are probably another 10, 15,000 that we never know. The rescue at the beginning of the film, when the man is asking for, we are here, please, please, please help. They never found that boat. That boat was gone with maybe 100 people, 150 people, and those bodies never been found. So the Mediterranean Sea is a tomb. It's a place where people die, and it's a huge tomb.
Please join me in thanking Gianfranco Rosi. Thank you.